Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to today's session. Right, so as usual, what we're going to be doing over here is to walk through the overview of the market, highlight some of the events, right? Then we'll jump into the charts, share with you the analysis and what are some of the opportunities that we can keep an eye on for the week. Okay, and we'll basically wrap up the session with a quick Q&A to see if you guys have any particular questions that you'd like to clarify. Okay, so quick one on the summary last week. Okay, so last week we have the US CPI as well as the pound CPI coming in. And of course, we did see that the US CPI actually come in at 3.2, okay, versus the previous month of 3.7, and the expected was actually 3.3. So we did see actually the dollar weaken quite a bit post CPI, right? And that basically ease off the pressure where the Fed will need to perhaps do another hike. That would likely also reduce the odds where we may not see. I would say we may not see a hike. Okay. At the end of this year. Okay. So that's where the dollar actually see some weakness. I think moving forward from a fundamental point of view, likely that would be the case for the US dollar. Okay, and we'll take a look at the charts later on in a while. And then for the pound itself, CPI year on year, we can see that it came out 4.6, previous month 6.7. Again, that actually saw the pound weaken. Okay, so that was two important data from last week. And if you come over to this week over here, we have the Canadian tomorrow. Again, on the CPI side of things. So again, we know that the CPI can actually create some decent move in the market, right? So pay attention to this tomorrow. If you're trading on the news, this is a very particular data that you can actually look to do news trading as well, okay, to capture that short-term volatility. And then throughout the week, we do have some PMI coming in from the euro, the pound, okay, and then as well as the US side of things on Thursday and Friday. But I don't think those PMI data are going to be like super important. Okay, so I think this week, the primary focus on the data side of things is definitely going to be the Canadian on the CPI side. All right. So with that said, let's take a look at the charts over here. Okay, you can see this is the dollar index, right? So basically CPI got a slide, and then retail sales got another slide, and then right now, okay, if you're looking at the FIB over here, we're essentially testing that 100% and 123.6 area. Okay, and for that reason, I'm actually neutral to that, right? Because on the perspective here, where we have this top, this basically come down 1, 2, and 3. And of course, internally here, we have a 3 move here as well, 3 move here as well, 3 wave up. So we're basically at a key area right now. Okay, and this means that, there might be some reaction that we can expect, that the market may bounce and maybe come back and retest this area. Okay, somewhere, let me pull in the FIB. Okay, it may be coming back to retest this area here, somewhere between that 105.30 to somewhere around 105 area. Okay, so if you take this FIB 50%, and then we have some previous structure area there as well. So we are expecting a short-term bounce, right? But of course, right now, it's still too early. Ideally, if we can get a bounce back up followed by a correction here, of course, then short term we can look for one more move up, okay, to capitalize on that. Or if this starts to form a crawl here, perhaps with a divergence, we can look for the counter trend move to the upside as well. Okay, so that's going to be my focus on the dollar. So this week here, we're likely looking at upside, okay, the kind of like short term retracement, or you can see as a short term counter trend trade opportunity. Okay, so that also translates to the euro. Okay, so euro dollar over here, you can see we have 3 wave completed. Okay, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, and then the yellow 1 2 3. Okay, we're also testing the FIB areas there. So this week pretty much similar. Okay, we're looking at the move back down. Okay, with some target areas around 1.0730. Again, depending on how the price develop here, if we can get a crawl, Okay, that will be a probably sell trade. If not, we'll get a push down following that a correction here. That will be also a sell trade with a mini head and shoulder pattern. Okay, so euro dollar definitely in my watch list, in my key list this week. Okay, again, same thing here, looking at the counter trend. Okay, pound dollar, we are overall bullish. Okay, but this would probably need a little bit of monitoring. Okay, this may turn into a potential flat structure. Okay, looking at how things are developing right now. Now, GBP USD, what I'm seeing here is essentially a 1, 2, 3. We have a reset, and then we have a first impulse push. Managed to break that high, right? And right now we're in a consolidation, so we're expecting a 3-wave move to complete the correction, and we can expect one more pushback up, right? So this one here, I'm not so keen in the short-term sell, but what I would be looking out for is if the market can come down towards this area at 1.237, 1.2350, we get a setup around there, that will be a short-term buy with target back at 1.2580, 1.2670. Okay, so pound dollar, that's the outlook. Okay, if you can get a pushback correctively to the downside here, if you can get a setup to get involved in a buy, that will be the trade to the upside. Okay, Aussie is really depending on how it's going to develop. This recent push a bit impulsive. Okay, so if it comes back down here, we may consider for buy, because then buying here with a risk to reward ratio, it makes sense. Okay, however, if this just does a correction here, then the buy trade may not be worthwhile because that risk to reward ratio is not that significant anymore. Okay, so the target of any buy we'll be monitoring is the 100% fit over here. It's around 0.6590. Once price tags that area, we're not so much interested in the buy anymore, at least for the short term, because that would then complete the 1, 2 trade. Okay, so based on context, if you get a correction here, we are still looking at upside, but I'm not going to be interested in that buy. If you can get a pushback down, and then form a crawl here, okay, a buy setup around this zone will be worthwhile, because then the risk to reward ratio makes much more sense. So it really depends on how the market is going to develop. Okay, now if this just continue to develop something like that, okay, tagging the area of our target, then of course I'll be interested to see if we can get a counter trend. Okay, so Aussie dollar really depends on, like, going forward tomorrow on Wednesday, how it's going to develop from here on. Okay, so that's on that. Dollar CAD here, we're still expecting a little bit more downside to give us a completed 1, 2, 3 wave. Right now we are seeing the development, perhaps it may take a little bit more time. This may go back up before the move down. Okay, giving us maybe an internal 3-wave correction here as well. Alright, so that will also open up a possibility of a sell trade opportunity moving forward. Okay. So we may get something like that, right? So keep an eye around that area, which we have quite a bit of a nice confluence, right? We have a 3-wave move, we have the 100% fit, we have this trend line structure over here as well. So this zone around 1.3810 would be a decent area to look for opportunity to see if we can get a sell trade down, right? So to complete against, I mentioned 1, 2, 3, and then the internals here as a 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I think dollar Canadian may get something, especially if tomorrow we have the CAD data. Okay, so CAD data maybe may push the CAD weakness, which means dollar Canadian we go up, and then maybe going into end of the week, we can't get a crawl structure here. That will be the best kind of setup we can potentially get. Okay, so yeah, dollar Canadian, keep an eye on that. Dollar yen is dropping, which is interesting. Most of the yen is actually falling recently, which is great. Okay, I mean, we have been talking about dollar yen for some time, right? Mentioning that I'm not so keen on the upside, but we are very much interested in the downside. And right now what we are seeing here is that the market actually made an impulsive break. I don't really trade the trend line, but as a reference, you can see this trend line is pretty significant and we get a massive impulsive drop. Okay, so what this means is, of course, if moving forward, we're able to see the market give us a corrective pullback, that would be very much a good opportunity to focus on the sell. Okay, why? Because again, going on the daily chart, you can see the downside is just massive. Okay, and then from a fundamental point of view, there's a very high possibility we're going to see the dollar weakness and then the yen strength coming in, and therefore that will push the dollar yen nicely to the downside, right? So definitely you want to pay very close attention whether we're going to get this trade end of this week or maybe early next week. If you can get a corrective pullback, definitely dollar yen is going to be one of the key trade to pay very, very close attention by the end of this year going into next year. Okay, so that's on the one, dollar yen, right? Highlight on it. Then we have gold. Okay, gold here is a bit on a tricky side of things, right? Because gold here has a couple of different ways we can look into depending on how price develop. One way that obviously this analysis that I put in here is looking at the possibility of this being done, meaning the pullback here is completed. This is the low, we're expecting a push up. Okay, of course, if that's gonna be the case, I do not want this to just keep falling down like that, right? I need this to go back up, I need this to come back down, I need this overall to be corrective to give me the probability that yes, this would probably be the low and we're gonna see more upside. However, if let's say looking at how things are developing right now, okay, this drop seems to be pretty strong. We need to be open to the possibility that this can develop into a bigger three-wave corrective move, right? So if I kind of like very, very quickly update on the alternative scenario, this would be the case, right? And if that's going to be the case, then of course this will come down a little bit more, and if we can get a corrective pullback here, then short term we can look for the sell. Okay, so some of you who is fairly new may see this as very, very subjective, how do we determine and things like that. But for those of you who are a bit more experienced, in the methods that we always approach the market, this is actually the strength, okay, of Elliott Wave itself, right, of understanding patterns and price movement. We don't need to always be fixated in one idea, but what we can always do is prepare two scenarios, okay, and we are you need to be clear, of course, right? We need to be clear what are the criteria that gonna help us pivot and shift to the next idea. Okay, so just now you can see, right, the first primary forecast is that we're expecting upside, right? And I can't mention, right, what I need the market to do is come down, go up, and come down, right? If you can see this, then obviously I'll be sticking to scenario 1. But if we don't get that, right, and the market basically just continue to trickle down and then we see something like that, then I will very quickly shift to scenario 2 and I will see, okay, short term, there might be a sell opportunity, then we'll look for a buy only at this zone. Okay, so again, that's actually a strength to me. Because of this methodology, allow us to like prepare, various scenario 1 or 2 steps ahead on the market. Whereas some of the traders who fairly new to this principle would see it as very confusing, right? But the encouragement over here that I want to give you is take some time to really understand it, okay? And of course, once you understand some of the principles that we always cover, you'll be able to start to see things in a very, very different perspective, right? So that's on gold. Therefore, I would say you just want to give it some time, okay? And you hear me saying this sometimes as well, right? We probably just need to give the market some time to prove to us what it wants to do. Okay, and that's what it is, right? Like gold here right now, we just need to let the market play out, and then we come back and see, okay, which scenario is likely going to be developing, and then we're gonna pivot and adapt to what the market is telling us, right? So that's on gold. Okay, crude oil here is moving nicely to the upside. We're kind of like a V-shaped bounce here. So of course, right, we're gonna be expecting more upside. at least for the short term, and if we can get a corrective pullback here, we can expect more upside. I think something is happening on crude oil, right? Let me just very quickly check. Not really. But this is pretty move. Let me see, is it a dollar? It's definitely not a dollar, right? So definitely something is moving on crude oil, right? I mean, the price is basically shooting up. So yeah, there's maybe some sentiment move or things like that. Okay, that's not probably updated in the Forex Factory yet. Okay, but basically on a Monday market, and we see some little push and with momentum is not something common. Okay, but in any case, I think crude oil here we're gonna expect the target to come back towards 84.10, 86.80. Any corrective pullback naturally will be a buy trade opportunity on crude oil. Okay, it has also completed this three wave 1, 2, 3, right? So that's on the crude oil side of things. S&P in general, equities, we are bullish. If you can get a corrective pullback, we'll definitely look to buy. Now, don't be too hop up on the Fed. Okay, those are just for reference and guidance. More importantly is how price develops, right? This can easily still develop into a flat, which means it just goes sideways. It doesn't really slant to the downside, and it's still basically a bullish opportunity. Okay, yeah, so S&P over here, I think any corrective pullback, that's your buy trade opportunity, right? We're overall bullish on the equity side of things. Pound yen, right? Pound yen is quite similar to the dollar yen. All the yen can move quite similar in tandem, right? So over here, we want to see a three wave pullback, and that will be a nice little sell trade. Okay, so quite straightforward, right? Aussie yen here as well. Aussie yen had potentially put in the very first move and the second move. So if tomorrow we can get the third move up, that will complete the three wave for a sell trade. Okay, so look out for areas on odd yen around 97.7 to 98. Okay, and your potential target here is 95.80 to 95.15. Okay, so those are the yen pairs that I'm looking out for. Aussie yen definitely there. Euro pound, we're still looking at a little bit more upside, but of course that's the nature of how euro pound works. It's not very impulsive in nature, but we're getting very close to the target. Okay, around 8775 to 8800 level. Once we're in that territory, you don't want to be buying it anymore, right? In fact, if you don't have any buy trade, this buy here is not worthwhile anyway. Okay, so my take is short term still upside, but once price enter into the territory and if you can get a crawl, the sell side, at least for the short term, may be something you want to pay attention to. Okay, euro pound, if you look at it from this perspective, okay, that would complete the yellow, sorry, in green, 1, 2, 3, right? In yellow, 1, 2, 3. Here as well, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then in white, 1, 2, 3, right? So a lot of sets of trees are basically compiling. So this area here, you can see there are 3 waves potentially completing. So definitely not buying into this territory until proven otherwise. You would rather look for the short-term sell, maybe coming back towards this low. Okay, so that's on euro pound side of things. Pound Australia, we're neutral. Nothing very clear right now, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is. Okay, and Bitcoin, a bit tricky. We're getting sideways move right now, but I think you don't want to be buying into this pattern structure, right? Because this pattern structure here is not carrying a lot of momentum. It seems like it's a crawl structure. This may even break it a little bit to the upside, something like this first. So I would say if you are longer term investing on BTC, you don't want to be selling it, right? So you want to wait for the pullback, then only look for a buy opportunity in the future. If you're trading it for a short term, then yeah, potentially you can look for this sell trade. Okay, but it's too early right now to be committing to that sell, right? I would say I want to see some kind of an impulsive break below this structure, right? Then a corrective move, then only we commit to the sell, right? So this is actually quite similar to dollar yen, right? So we're basically waiting for kind of like that commitment from a price to actually break certain trend line structure, right? We don't trade the trend line directly, but we always use it as a potential reference point as well. Okay, so we're waiting for the impulsive break. Okay, on Bitcoin first. Yeah. Good. Okay, let me take some questions. I see there are a couple of questions coming in this week. The first one here I see is from Edward, right? Edward asks, can we take a look at NU and Kiwi Cat? Okay. NU is this. Okay, Kiwi dollar, very similar to the chart on pound dollar actually. Okay, so you can see the similarity, right? We got this break. 1, 2, 3, and then if that's going to be the case, we can look for an upside short term. Okay, so that's on Kiwi dollar, right? So if you are into this, you can also use a bit of a fib here to measure that 3 wave. You can put an internal little channel structure, right? So that's what we're going to look out for. Okay, so yeah, if you're looking at this from Kiwi dollar point of view, then yeah, more or less quite aligned with that. Kiwi Cat wise, let's see Kiwi Cat. Okay, Kiwi Cat, I would not be really looking at the buy right now. Okay, why is because we may have completed this 3 wave here, right? So I would want to give it a little bit more time first. Okay, whether this is going to be a reversal or not, it's probably still too early. But of course, if you're aggressive, you can look for the breakout as a potential double top. But definitely not buying into that area, right? Because this would then be a potential WXY 3 wave move. Okay, we have the fit areas there. So Kiwi Cat is not something I would be buying at where we are. Okay, if you want to buy on Kiwi Cat, at least wait for a sizable pullback. Okay, then maybe around this zone you can look for buy. But then, you know, it needs a lot of time for price to develop, so there's no rush and you have more than enough time to see how the price is going to develop first. Okay, but again, based on where we are, 3 wave has been completed, not so much into the buy trade. Okay, so I hope that also clarified that perspective, right? Kiwi Cat I think is quite clear, right? That's definitely going to be a primary view I'm going to have on Kiwi Cat. Okay, next question I see here very quickly is from James. Looking at HSI, seems like a V shape, right? Hang Seng. Yeah, that's a V shape. Okay. Yeah, so we kind of anticipated that bounce, right? I mean, we did not expect that huge little quick reaction. Okay, but again, the reaction actually comes from this 3 wave move here, right? Okay. So right now, Hang Seng, what's gonna be my take? Okay, I would say with this strong reaction back down, we're definitely gonna look up for this structure area, right? Depending on next move, right? So let me just remove that fit. Depending on how price is gonna develop here. Okay, if it's gonna be a corrective retracement that looks something like that, okay, this is likely gonna come back down and retest the bottom. Okay, so it really depends on how it's going to react here, right? If it's corrective, you can look for downside to retest the bottom. If this just goes back up as a V, you'll probably not have a very clear structure and just wait it out. Okay, yeah, because if this is going to be a V shape, it gets very complex. Okay, it gets complex, so we don't have a clear structure until price develop further and see how it goes, right? So the only clear pattern that you can capitalize on the potential trade is if this does a correction, you take this down here. Right? So that's my take on Hang Seng. Okay, a couple of questions. Jimmy asked, what happened to your old website? Jimmy, not sure which one you're referring to. Maybe it's easier that you just drop me an email, so that I can assist you from there. Okay. Sunadro asked about the Canadian yen and the euro pound. I think we covered on the euro pound already, right? So let's see the CAD yen. Uh, let's see. Okay, with the impulsive drop on the yen, okay, this would start to be a little bit more looking like this. Okay, among the yen, right? I mean, like if you just compare CAD yen and maybe Aussie yen, you can see, Aussie yen context wise give us a clearer sell opportunity compared to CAD yen, right? You can see that because why, from a bigger picture perspective, this is slanting down. This seems like overall this is the upside, okay? But for Aussie yen, this is slanting up, right? So there's a slight difference. Even pound yen here, right? Okay, you can see the slight difference, okay? So that's what I mean by context, right? So sometimes you guys want to include in, not just the pattern, but how does the pattern develop and things like that. So my take on CAD yen is probably not going to be something the best to me, okay? Because I can look at it from this angle. Short term, this may continue, maybe drop towards 107 area, but that drop itself may potentially complete this three-wave move, right? So that downside potential, if I put it in comparison, CAD yen, odd yen, pound yen, dollar yen, the downside on the sell trade, naturally the dollar yen, the pound yen, even the odd yen, will be very much higher than this sell trade on CAD yen. Okay, so that's how I'm gonna filter off, some of the trades here, so that you don't look at too many things and you keep yourself focused on it. Okay. Good. Yeah. So that's on CAD yen side of things. Okay. Is it a bullish divergence on the H1? Yeah. Okay. You do have a little bit of a divergence here, right? But that doesn't directly say a buy, right? Again, a divergence is simply telling you a lack of momentum, which again means you don't want to be selling there. It doesn't directly translate to a buy. So what it means is that on the H1, don't sell it here. Okay, but if let's say this pull back, right, and then of course on the H4 it will also develop into a crawl up into a correction pattern, impulse correction, then that may still be a sell after all. Okay, a divergence can mean the momentum to the downside is slowing down and the pullback may start. Okay, so yeah, you are right that that's a divergence. Okay, so again, it means that don't sell it at the current price point, but that doesn't mean that you immediately jump into a buy trade. Yeah. Jimmy says right in 2020 that time website. Yeah, again, Jimmy, you have my email. Can you drop me an email so that I'll be able to better assist you on that. Okay, if you need my email, it's again on my YouTube, right? If you're watching it on YouTube, you click on to the info tab if I'm not wrong, right? That's the email over there. You can drop me an email. Okay, Chiar asks dollar franc, cat franc, and pound kiwi. Dollar franc, okay, dollar franc, I actually look at it. Yeah, that was a very nice little trade. Okay, but dollar franc right now, I did look at it earlier today as well. Okay, I think the clearest pattern right now is developing something like that. Okay, now, you see me use a lot of fibs, right? You can see here equal leg. That is where the 100% is. Okay, but at the same time, we are already developing a little bit of a crawl pattern here. Okay, if you bring in your RSI, you do see the divergence. And we did see that price has actually broken that previous low. Okay, so I just want to highlight also, right, using this as an example, while we have the fibs, it doesn't necessarily always mean it needs to go there. Okay, it's just a reference guide. But based on the three wave principle, if the price actually breaks that low, okay, doesn't matter how much it breaks, but as long as it breaks that low, this three wave can be seen as completed. Okay, so this three wave can be seen as a completed move, and if price just decides to kick off from here, that is a valid three wave as well. Okay, and adding to that, we also have the internal three wave here that is already done. Right, so it's already currently now testing that 1, 2, 3, right? So that internal is done. So if I put some label in, right, this can be a three wave here. Okay, and of course, the bigger one here is this three wave. Okay, so does it mean that we're definitely looking at upside? Not really yet, because a crawl is just a sign of an exhaustion to the downside. What would give us an extra layer of confirmation is if you can get an impulsive break and then a correction here, then that would more or less confirm more upside, right? Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at for the dollar franc. Yeah, I mean that's the only way I'm looking at it, right? There's no alternative scenario as of now. There's a good chance that maybe this can still come down, right? I mean, this can still be running flat and then one more drop towards that 100% that when you bounce. But again, when we forecast the chart, we don't forecast a running flat. Okay, we always forecast the simplest first, the most straightforward scenario. But we just understand that, you know, again, everything is in probability. There's a chance that might happen, but again, we would seldom forecast a running flat. Okay, so my take on dollar franc is, if you're looking at this pair, I would personally wait for a break first. Of course, if you're aggressive, you can take the breakout. Okay, but if you're a bit more conservative, you want confirmation, wait for a break, wait for the corrective, then from there on, you know, with all this alignment, you can look for upside. Okay. Yeah, so that's on the dollar franc. Cap franc here. Okay, this is a bit tricky. I mean, from where the current price is in relation to some of this move, right? I will not be so keen in selling it. Okay, that's based on context, right? But it's not a very nice little pattern to be buying, right? There are some factors that can contribute to buy, like a little bit of double bottom. I think hourly we may get a divergence, right? Hourly we get a divergence, so you can trade based on, you know, potentially the hourly double bottom structure, neckline breakout, and things like that. Yeah, but to be honest, I really just don't like the franc pairs, right? So you actually realize that I don't really trade a lot of francs. Yeah, it's just my personal take where, you know, if I can, I'll just avoid the franc pairs. But if that's something that you're looking into, that I think the analysis that I'm gonna have is something like that. Okay, double bottom on the lower time frame, potentially looking for the breakout. Definitely not looking to sell it at where we are right now, right? I mean, we kind of have this little bottomish trend line, right? Unless the market actually decides to break down with some momentum, and then we'll look for more downside, because once it is able to break down, then that clears off the entire structure here, right? We need to rotate the entire different pattern. But for now, this is still potentially supporting the case of it, and therefore I'm not going to be so keen in selling first. Okay. Pound New Zealand. Now, Pound New Zealand is likely going to be upside based on this pattern structure, right? On a bigger scheme perspective. Okay. Yeah. So we're basically gonna wait for this to come down a little bit more, and then we'll see if we can get it outside. Right, and that will be the low that we'll be talking about. So the area is somewhere around 2.055, right? 2.055 to look up for buy area. Okay, so this is a very simple pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? We're looking up for that. Yeah, so that's some pound kiwi. Yeah. Euro Canadian. Yeah, this one here, not something I will look into right now. Okay. Initially you can see the drawing, right? We're expecting some kind of a crawl to trade it. The market actually break that high, so the structure actually changed a little bit, right? But that's not a buy setup yet. We don't have a buy setup yet, right? Okay, the next key high, that's very obvious, is there. Okay, we broke this high here, so the plan moving forward is if you can get a correction, okay, then we can consider this move up. But if you don't get a correction, then you know the risk to reward ratio is just very difficult for your plan, right? Because if you buy here, where we put a stop here or here, your risk to reward ratio may not be that worthwhile. Okay, so wait for the pullback. If you can get a corrective pullback, of course, adding layers of analysis there as well, maybe a lower time frame confirmation. Then if you buy up there, then of course this buy here would have a way better risk to reward ratio, right? Yeah, so that's my take on Euro Canadian. Okay, yeah, but this is a massive run. Okay, oftentimes when you get a massive run, the pullback may not be shallow. It may be a deeper pullback, right? That's my observation from the markets, right? So you can see over here, right, what I mean by that. Whenever you get a massive run, the pullback can come deep, right? When you get a massive run, the pullback or even potential reversal may come deep. Okay, so again, this is pretty much a massive run without much significant pullback. So there's a good chance, you know, the pullback may come deep. Okay, the question is just when, right? So right now we obviously don't have a sell setup yet. Okay, so you need to be, you know, you need to get the distinction, right? When I mean after a run up, okay, we expect a pullback, it doesn't mean you sell it now. Okay, so the thing here is you need to, what I want to say is, you know, when the market move a certain degree to a certain direction already, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will need to reverse immediately. Okay, because it can take longer before it decides to make that pullback or reset. Okay, so you just need to be very, very disciplined in following your trade plan, in following your setups. Okay, like to me, EuroCAD right now really has nothing onto that that allow us to sell or even buy. Okay, so just give it time, wait for the setup to come to us, then only you look for the sell. Okay, yeah. So James asked, what's my take on silver? Silver is upside, right? I think definitely you want to focus on upside. Okay, seems to be resistance around 23.60, right? So I think you're talking about the recent move back down here. Now obviously we can give it a bit more time to see whether this is just going to turn out into a correction, or this is going to be a reversal, right? Whether it's going to be a V or correction, you just need to give it time. The market will prove to you. If this continue to go back up a little bit, come back down a little bit, then that's a correction. We're definitely looking at upside. Okay. Now silver here, my primary forecast is quite straightforward, right? We're naturally looking at this move. Okay. This is 1. This is 2. We're expecting one more push up. Okay. That's my primary forecast. So again, if this does a correction, that would naturally be a setup to get involved in the buy. Okay. if we don't get a correction, if this just continue like momentum keep dropping, then this may turn into a slightly different pattern, right? Basically, this can turn into a deeper pullback, okay, to give us a 1 2 3, or it can simply be a pattern that looks something like that. Okay, so I mean, by the time, again, those are a bit more complex, right, in that forecast. So I always say keep things simpler. What's the simplest pattern of all is this. So if you get that, great. Okay, if you don't get that, we just need to, if you want to look at silver, we need to just monitor it closely, see what's the next likelihood of the pattern that is developing. Yeah, so the simplest is expect this to go up, right? Around $24.90 will be the target area to look for. The buy. The target area is around 24.90. Okay. Dio mentioned Aussie franc. Got off my buy. Looking for a sell. Yeah, okay. Aussie franc, I think is quite clear, right? The pattern that you're looking to sell. It's probably that. If you use a little bit of Fips here, that will be the area, right? So I think this is a very nice little classic potential three-wave move. Right, internal 1 2 3, then you're trading this bigger move down. Okay, yeah, I think that's quite straightforward. Okay, odd cat daily hidden divergence. Not really. Okay, there's no real divergence here, right? I mean, if you look at this here, the market is going up at the bottom. The RSI is also going up at the bottom, right? So there's really no divergence. The market is also making highs, and RSI is also making highs. Okay, so for me, there's no divergence at that point. Okay. Euro odd looking for buy. I think, yeah, I have some impression about Euro odd as well. Yeah, I mean, probably looking at this here, right? Okay, the channel may not look the nicest of all, but I think yeah. Okay, that's the impression I see on Euro odd as well. Okay, so yeah, you're looking somewhere around 1.66, yeah, which is around there, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I think like Euro odd is quite clear. Odd franc you mentioned is also quite clear, right? Aussie Kiwi on a 4-hour looking at a sell. Okay. Yeah, I can see where that is coming. The only thing I'm not so confident about this sell is this three wave doesn't look the nicest of all. But of course, what you can do, right, or what I usually also do is you have that fib area, right? Let's say 618 right there. You can of course go down to the hourly and give yourself a little bit more confirmation, right? So there are two ways to look for it. This three wave may have completed. On the hourly, we have a little bit of a double topish formation. That was your neckline. Alternatively, if it doesn't, move down and form a double top here, this can also develop into a potential move like that. And then you get something like this. Then you have a crawl for the breakdown. Okay. So you can play around with that, because what I don't like about the H4 here is this move up is impulse, this move down is impulse, this move up is impulse. So you kind of look a little bit awkward, right? As compared to, let's say, like Aussie franc. Okay, you can see Aussie franc is neat. It's a very nice little corrective move. Okay, so that's that slight difference between them. Okay, and for that reason, that's where I mentioned just now, Aussie Kiwi, I'm not so confident about it. So what you can always do is you look for the extra layer of confirmation on a lower time frame. Okay, yeah. Good. Okay, last one I see here is this sell dollar. Sell the dollar franc. Sorry, sell the dollar yen. Again, I wouldn't suggest you go and sell it now because that's an impulsive move. Wait for the pullback, then only you sell. Okay, because again, I always say if you sell it here, where are you gonna put your stop? Here, then your risk is so huge, it's not gonna be worth the risk to reward ratio. Okay, you might as well wait for the pullback and then look for a sell here. Your stop can be just above there. Your risk to reward ratio is gonna be way better. Okay, yeah, so that's my take on it. Okay, good. Quick to wrap up the session. Just very quick announcement. Okay. Okay, directly pop here. Okay. Everything trading over here, we are doing some better tests, right? In terms of like, would such a session helps. So for me, I'm running 2 sessions here this week. Okay. Tomorrow is gonna be in Chinese. 3:30 to 4:30, which is basically the London opening session. We're gonna have a live trade session. Okay. So if you're interested, just head over to everythingtrading.com. Okay. And then of course, this one here. Right, and then what you can do is you can actually register for an account. Okay, right now all these live sessions are all free. So once you register for an account, let me very quickly show you once you log in what you're gonna see. Okay, so once you log in, you'll be able to see on your dashboard, what are the upcoming sessions that we have. So if you're interested in some other sessions, definitely you can join in. Right, for me over here in the London session tomorrow, we have one in Chinese, and then on Wednesday, London session, we have one in English. Yeah, so if you're interested, and you're free to join us, just feel free to create your account, right, at everythingtrading.com, and then you'll be able to join us there. Okay, I'm not sure, how long these free sessions are gonna be. But right now the team at Everything Trading is doing it. I mean, opening up all the sessions here for free. So make the best use of it. Okay. Of course you can also join in on other speakers, right? Like their new session is in the evening, New York session, right? A new over here do it every Tuesday as well in the UK session. Okay. Yeah, so that's all from me for today. There are a couple of definitely interesting opportunities to keep an eye on. I think those that are tagged in orange, some of those are pairs that I'm personally looking into. Some of those are opportunities that you guys actually mentioned, and I think it's worth noting. Like Euro Odd, I think it's definitely worth noting. Or Z Franc, I think is quite clear in the structure as well. Okay, so these two I think definitely can take a look. I mean silver here definitely as well. And then some of the others that I'm personally looking into are like Euro Dollar, Dollar CAD, Dollar Yen, of course, Odd Yen, even the Pound Yen here potentially. Okay, so definitely we're not short of opportunity this week, right? Yeah, definitely quite a bit. Okay, so good. That's all for me for this session over here. I think it's been quite an interactive session. That's great. If you guys can keep it up, at this kind of like interaction every week, that will be really nice. Okay, so all the best for this week's trading. Okay, for those of you who are joining us tomorrow and Wednesday, I'll see you guys inside. Okay, and that's all for me. Good night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, bye bye.